everyone! I wanted to go over the design process, inspirations, and general concept for Scylla and Cordelia, the two landwalking characters from my upcoming animated short REEFSIDE Rumble. But before I do, hello, my name is Kat, and I love to design and 3D model characters. I've been gone a little while. I'll talk a little bit about that probably sometime next month in an upcoming video, probably. But for now, we've got some designs to discuss. I'm really excited to walk you through it, so let's get started. So, I originally designed Scylla as part of my Mermaid 2023 asset pack, along with two actual mermaids inspired by different subcultures and music. I wanted to create a kind of a take on the octopus-themed sea witch, but most of my reference searches came back with images of Ursula from The Little Mermaid. I did take partial inspiration from her design. A more stereotypically masculine haircut, like her spiky faux hawk situation, and her rounder and fatter body type were very evocative, I felt, but I didn't feel inspired by that specific kind of sultry energy that she has. And this break from the idea of sexpot sea witch really opened the concept up to go in an entirely different direction. I started considering different types of magic wielders and users, and came up with this sort of battlecaster type. An octopus-inspired war mage with a tentacle quiff like the octolings from Splatoon. This immediately called to mind armor sets, and especially the big, elaborate sets in games like Monster Hunter. I looked at a ton of the armor sets to get a feel for the different pieces of armor that I wanted, and the general shape language that I wanted to use for the character, and then I transposed it into a different sort of creature type. Where Monster Hunter armors are derived usually from bigger, more reptilian creatures with bug flourishes or like hints at smaller fauna in the area, I considered the kinds of animals one could find in a tide pool off the coast of a big reef. With this data, I drafted up this base concept. I thought the idea had legs and was super fun, so from there I iterated on it a little and chose my favorite of the three sketches you see here and began working. This is the original model that I came up with last year. It's not great, I'll admit it. I was still really new to 3D modeling, so I hadn't yet figured things out like loop tools or combining rigs or how to properly model a face. That face is nightmarish, and I will admit that. It haunts my dreams, but honestly, as far as the model concept goes, it's a pretty decent starting point. It was a good enough starting point, in fact, that when I was considering animation projects that I wanted to do this year, I immediately wanted to work with this model and have like a big action sequence. It was just too bad that when I looked at the model again, with the fresh eyes and better standards that I currently have, that I was like, oh no, this is absolutely unusable. I cannot animate with this. But then I realized that that was a good thing, because it meant I got to take another crack at the concept. I'm a big believer in reworking things 50 times, 80 times, 100 times, until it looks right to me. So I was very excited to rework and rethink the character. The first thing I did was go back to the original sketches. What did I like? What did I want to keep? What could be simplified or removed? I really liked a lot of her silhouette details. The tentacle quiff was always going to stay, the concept of it was kind of absolutely iconic, and I had already rigged and painted 3 tentacles, so it was kind of non-negotiable by that point. The shell-shaped breastplate was a good, starting point, but I didn't really like my execution of it. It was a single object with no detailing, just like a nacre texture, so I decided to update that into a full armored corset piece with a magically reinforced seashell bra. The fin, forearm guards, and neck piece got a little bit of an update, and I couldn't possibly get rid of the octopus bag of holding on her hip, or the magical kraken eye patch. Overall, most of her more iconic pieces stayed, they just got a fresh coat of paint. Instead of the overcomplicated shorts with the mesh panels and leather, though, I took inspiration from more cartoony depictions of pirates and incorporated a pair of striped leggings. I felt it would be a simple base garment that I could drape other silly things on. I gave her a cool leg guard on her left leg to contrast the rounded shapes of the octopus on her right leg. That slash and lace detailing on the thighs is 100% yoinked from Carlack's base design in Baldur's Gate 3, though. I'm not even gonna pretend I didn't get it from that. I took similar inspiration from stylized pirate armor sets from games like Sea of Thieves for her huge, chunky boots. The tongues have this gorgeous surf pattern and have little barnacles and starfish growing on the toe boxes, which I thought would just be a really fun idea. This was also after I had designed Cordelia, so I was at least on a subconscious level inspired by similar prints and energies. Stripped down to their very basic attire, they're dressed really similarly, so I wanted to kind of lean into that to create a sort of visual cohesion. I wanted viewers to subconsciously see them together and go, oh, they're on the same team, but more on that in a little bit when we break down Cordelia's character. Everything up until this point felt a lot closer to the idea, but it was still missing like a fun, stupid layer, so I gave her a fishnet overskirt with a long purple bit of fabric draping down to the right side, and it felt complete. I was so much happier with this model outcome than the other one. She actually looks like a cool pirate war mage now, which is exactly how I wanted her to look. I even rigged her Kraken eye patch so the pupil moves. I love how she turned out. She looks so fucking sick now. I gave her trident a bit of a coat of paint as well to match her overall look, and the full model with her props looks so sick. Just wait till she gets to cast her shield spell. I did some extra texture work on that. There's a full texture breakdown over on Patreon, so go check that out and subscribe if you're curious. But now let's talk about our bard girly Cordelia. Now, Cordelia is a little bit of a different story in terms of character design, because in a lot of ways her finalized character came first. I was taking a month off back in November of last year to focus on visa stuff, which, if you know me, you know that that's like a really big deal for me. I am always getting stressed out by bureaucracy, so like that was just, I was having a nightmare of a time, essentially. But I had nothing to do with all of my anxious energy, like it was just pent up in there. So I ended up conceiving of a game with one of my best friends from university who works in games writing and narrative design. We're still working it out right now. Game dev stuff is also all up on Patreon. I'm just kind of in the middle of figuring out how to do stuff in Unity, so you know, it's a little bit slow going, but progress is happening somewhat. Anyways, though, I designed this little band lineup here for the game's playable characters at the time, and began expanding each into their own character design sheet. The game has strong undertones of Dungeons and Dragons, so a lot of the character designs in it have a sort of casual musician/adventurer kind of vibe, and Cordelia is an especially good example of this. Cordelia was conceived of originally as a Triton bard who played an upright bass at the time, and I used a lot of rounded shapes, particularly in the hair and clothing, to offset her more angular features, fins, and hand webbing. Her clothes are a bit more designed to be like swashbuckling and combat ready, because my initial idea for her was that she came off a pirate ship and wanted a new life as a musician. So she has a lot of smaller armor pieces, wrist guards, a chainmail shirt, a sort of stylized tasset. I wanted to use medieval armor shape language as a base for a more modern look. So she's covered in like spikes and skulls. I think overall the vibe for her has How to Train Your Dragon undertones, but mixed with a more nautical pirate style as opposed to like Vikings. As for the more casual parts of her outfit, a lot of them are also present in Scylla's design. The seashell breastplate, armored corset, striped trousers, and boots are all in attendance on this design as well, but sort of bumped up a bit for style points. Her trousers are more of a harem cut as opposed to the straight leg cut on Scylla's, and her boots are much more glamorous, boasting a sky-high stiletto with brass buckles. What I think this conveys about the world this little short takes place in is that there's obviously a bit of a standard for how seafaring adventurers look, but, you know, anything can still be styled. I think overall Cordelia's design communicates a character that styles herself as a swashbuckling bard, still combat ready like her friend, but with more of a focus on her own personal look. Where Scylla's look is a little bit more functional and practical, Cordelia's is overall a bit more consciously styled and stylish, which I think suits her perfectly as a charisma-based caster. Speaking of basses, as I previously mentioned, Cordelia is a bard. Her musical instrument, as previously conceived, is this large upright elven bass. This was actually the first asset I finished for this animation. It's about 3 years old at time of recording. I originally made this instrument as part of a short animated gift from my uncle, who is a violinist. I based it off of this design of an elven viol, and thanks to shitty AI art flooding my Google results, I can't find the original image I used as reference anymore. I think it might have been this illustration by Ryan Steiner. I don't still have the file because I've switched computers a few times since, but I'm pretty sure it was this, and it took like 5 different Google searches to hunt it down. In all honesty, I really love this design, but it doesn't really fit the aesthetic of the animated short all that well. It's also kind of a relic of a time when I wasn't as good at modeling and textures as I am now. I should have really replaced it by now, honestly. But all that being said, it would be super annoying to cut a new trailer for Cordelia now, and I kind of like that it looks a little bit janky and old, so I just decided to give it a quick coat of paint and a few new pegs here and there. This final version of the base will be making its public debut in a couple weeks when the short is finally released. Friends, thank you for joining me on this fun little deep dive into my character design process. I'll be posting a few more behind the scenes look at this animated short in the coming weeks, but they're exclusive to Patreon subscribers, so if you're interested in, for example, the character work my actors did for their mermaids, or the languages I chose for spellcasting and why I chose them, you should really sub to my Patreon to get those videos whenever they drop this month, all leading up to the final release of REEFSIDE Rumble at the end of the month, along with the rest of my 3D rewards for September. Anyways, I have been Kat, your friendly neighborhood 3D artist. This is me signing out for the time being. Stay safe, stay frosty, and I will see you all soon. Bye!